Thank you for staying with us. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's headline inflation rate has surged to 24.23% in March 2025, signaling a 1.85% increase from February's number. The report also highlights that inflation has been driven largely by increases in the prices of essential food and non-food items, which has further strained the finances of millions of Nigerians grappling with sluggish wage increases and economic uncertainty. Nigerians are now feeling the brunt of this as planting season is around the corner, with supply chain disruptions, logistics challenges and insecurity in major food production regions compounding the issue. Well, joining us in the studio is the CEO of Finance with Mukhtar Mohammed. Good morning. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning.
And we also have joining us via Zoom the CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Good morning, Dr. Yusuf. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great. Let me start with you, Dr. Yusuf. One would wonder why we are witnessing an increase in these numbers when the government has been talking about a drop in the prices of food items, but yet it seems that is not reflecting in these numbers that we are witnessing. Help us better interpret and understand the dynamics behind these numbers.
Yeah, okay. The point is that if you look at the NBS report, that's National Bureau of Statistics report, inflation report for March, there are two major components. That's what we call the core inflation, and there is the food inflation. For the first time in a long time, the core inflation is much higher elevated than the food inflation. Core inflation this time is 24.43. Food inflation is 21.79. And what that is speaking to is that items that have some relationship with imports, that is non-food items, experience much higher prices, over the review period. Whereas items that has to do with food did not experience that much elevated price. And the implication of that is that, most of the items that are non-food are anchored largely on imports. Import prices are anchored largely on foreign exchange and issues around the ports, clearance of the cargo, and all of that. So what one could deduce from this is that factors like the exchange rates, factors like the ecosystem in the international trade system, importation, import duty, clearance of cargo, and all of this seems to have had a major impact on inflation in March. So that is why we have a situation where we are having core inflation being much higher than food inflation. And this is essentially about exchange rate. And if you look at the trend, particularly in the later part of March, we have been witnessing some pressure in the exchange rates. And the economy is highly sensitive to movements in exchange rates. Once you have indications of depreciating exchange rates, it has a way of fueling inflation. And quite a number of things, even energy products, are related in a way to exchange rate, because we still have some key components of that are imported. So this is where essentially the challenges are coming from. That is not to say that we still don't have challenges with food inflation. Of course, we still have challenges also arising from problem of insecurity, problem of the cost of logistics, and so on and so on. But the bigger issue for me here, going by the fact that we have a much higher elevated core inflation, is that things that are imported are now getting more expensive, particularly because of movements in exchange rate, and to some extent, also issues in the geopolitical environment, or global environment, if I may put it that way. All this tariff issue by Trump, impact of that on the strength of the dollar because the dollar is weakening and all of that. So quite a number of factors are driving this, but essentially it's about the exchange rates and of course the issue of energy costs, the issue of cost of logistics, and the cost of importation generally. So those are the key factors. And just as we say, these are generally supply side factors. Because when we talk about inflation, we have demand side factors, which is pressure coming from the demand side. We have supply side factors, which is pressure coming from the cost of inputs. But this is largely a supply side issue.
That's right. All right, Mr. Mohammed, there was a time in Nigeria where we had single digit inflation, 9%, 8%. I hear it had even gone as low at 7%, not substantiated by me, though. That's why I need to be careful here. What are the factors that we need to start going back that direction? Because at the end of the day, inflation figures affects everybody, the pepper seller, the Okada man, and the big man in the office.
Well, I think Dr. Yusuf has said it all. Those times that you saw those single digit exchange rate was very stable. Very, very stable. I think that time we have exchange rate from 160, then we went to 190. And in those 160, 190, you see consistently for 3 years, for 4 years. Then there's a shock, either through crude oil, and then you see when crude oil price goes down, then you see exchange rate now, goes up, and so there was actually the exchange rate has been the key determiner in Nigeria inflation and pressure. Why? It's because whether they believe it or not, over 70% of what we consume we import. And also, if we are not importing those products, the machineries that make those products into a finished product, we're importing them. So anyhow, there's an import. There's exchange rate challenges there. Now, with the current challenges that we are having in exchange rate, it has to do with what we call, I said it before, but it's like makeup. When a lady does makeup, it's not really showing the true value of who she is until she removes the makeup. Yeah. Until you that's why now this lady will say they do foundation first, make it so it looks nice. So what we are doing, how did we get to the inflationary figure being where it is? Was it that we dealt with the supply chain issue? Was it that we dealt with the exchange rate issue? No. Where we are today, where the inflation went from a high of about 30-something% to a low of 28%, was largely driven because we did rebasing. Rebasing is not a tool to bring down inflation. Rebasing is a tool to tell the international community, tell foreign investors, there is a new opportunity that we did not capture the last time. Now, how does rebasing now help in bringing food to the table of the ordinary man? By rebasing, you attract new investors. They come into the country, set up new, so you create employment. By rebasing, you attract foreign direct investors in those sectors, those new sectors that are growing so fast. By rebasing, you'll be able to attract those investors, and when those investors come in, they will come in with FX, they will stabilize your exchange rate. Now, in this current rebasing, all these factors that I've mentioned, how has it helped? Now, Nigerian key inflationary drive, like you pointed in your report, food inflation, transportation, housing. So that has been a key driver of inflation since. It has not gone down to there's no any other issues. Those are the three main things that have been driving inflation for as far as I know. Sure. Now, in this rebasing, how did rebasing help in tackling food inflation? How did rebasing help in tackling transportation? How did rebasing help in housing? If rebasing, as rebasing the economy, now driving a lot of development into the housing sector, if rebasing the economy, driving a lot of these big companies, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz and others into Nigeria to begin to produce here, so we'll begin to say, okay, fine, the inflation, then that will bring down inflation. That will stabilize the exchange rate because they will not just be coming in empty-handed. So the challenge is, when you try to like I said, do the makeup, then after you take your shower, your real face will come out.
Well, so let me go to Dr. Yusuf. In talking about real face, as our guest here in the studio had, tried to paint the picture. If you look at a pepper seller in my 12, for instance, is now having to pay 70% or more in terms of transportation of goods from the north to the south, and this is also, affected by fuel cost and security levies. My question is, do you think our economic models is fully capturing these microeconomic realities in terms of, or especially when crafting inflation policies?
Of course, it captures it, because first, if you look at the cost drivers, because just as Mukhtar said, most of the inflation challenge we have in Nigeria are cost-driven. And when we look at cost, particularly with respect to food inflation, transportation cost is very high. It's a major component of that. And transportation cost is related or connected to the cost of either PMS or the cost of diesel, because our rail system is not that efficient yet. So the domestic logistics is heavily dependent on road transportation. And road transportation, of course, the cost fluctuates with the cost of diesel or cost of PMS. And most of the people that move all these things are all these small traders, middlemen, and all of that. So by the time they go through all of this, and this is a very vast country. And don't forget, most of the food products that we consume, especially down south, come largely from the northern part of the country, from the middle belt up to the northwestern side and all of that, and northeast. So by the time they go through the length and breadth of the country, the landing cost is always very high. And in addition to that, for some of those items that are perishables, there's also a lot of losses, what you call post-harvest losses. In the process of moving them from the farm to the market, a lot of losses are suffered. These losses are also factored into the final prices of those products that have not gone bad. So all of these costs are captured, in the final price. So these prices are captured because the survey that is done by the NBS, of course, is a survey that covers prices in the marketplace. And by the time you are looking at prices in the marketplace, so a lot of these factors have been factored into it, even including all these unofficial levies at the checkpoints here and there, either by security agencies or by local government officials, by TAUs, by the Food Association. All manner of levies are paid before these things finally land at the retail end in the market. So those factors are captured. That is what it is. But what is important is for us to look at how we can, deal with issues of logistics. Imagine if you have a rail network that can move easily from the north to the south, from the east to the west, and all of that. This will crash. It's going to crash transportation costs significantly. But I must also acknowledge that the administration has been doing quite a lot in terms of road transportation. Because if you go around, at least we see some significant investments in road transportation. So the more we see this movement, I think the better it is for logistics. Because logistics cost is a major component of this cost. But we need to do a lot more. And of course, just as Mukhtar said, insecurity is also a very big issue. Right. In the last 1 month now, we have been seeing a resurgence of insecurity. People are now migrating from their villages to IDP camps and all sorts of challenges, so we need to be on top of this. So these things are multifaceted. All right. And these things that we need to be looking at.
Interesting, and I think that will be my next question, still with you, Dr. Yusuf, because there are those who are saying that we are obviously in a cost of living crisis as it is. They do not know if anytime soon the prices of goods and services or these numbers will reduce and what it would take to even reduce the numbers. From your perspective, with the measures government is putting in place, because you have said the government is doing a lot in terms of transportation and other drivers of these figures we are seeing with regards to the inflation. So are you positive that perhaps we might see a reduction in the nearest future, or we might see an increase?
Well, you know, there are some fundamental drivers. So whatever one says about, you know, what the projection will be has to be conditional. Mukhtar talked about crude oil price, crude oil output, and impact on foreign exchange. If we're able to, you know, make a lot more progress in terms of our crude oil output, then we can have some impact on exchange rates. If you have an impact on exchange rate, positive impact, I mean, in terms of foreign exchange supply, exchange rates will moderate. If exchange rate moderates, inflation will drop. So that is one window of opportunity which you can look at to expect a moderation in inflation. If the security agencies are able to do a lot more, of course they have been trying their best, but it seems that the more we feel that we are getting a relief, the more we have a resurgence in this matter. And security situation is highly linked to agricultural productivity. Agricultural productivity is a critical factor in food inflation. So if the security agencies maybe can come up with new strategies or something to give the farming community some more confidence that they can go back to the farm, they can go back to their community and farm and all of that. If we make progress along that line, then we are likely to see some impact on food inflation, which is positive. That's right. You know, so these are some of the things. And of course, if you look at our currency too, because our currency vis-a-vis the CFA, you know, practically all the countries around us in the sub-region are spending CFA. CFA has gained significant appreciation over the Naira. And because of that, it is now much more profitable for food merchants to ship our food products outside the country than to sell them domestically, because they make more money. Because if you have the CFA gives you a lot more by the time you convert it to Naira. So we also have that challenge of movement of our food products and also some other products as well to the neighboring countries.
That's right.
So this again is a challenge for those who are managing our borders to ensure that we do a lot more to stop this movement of our food outside the country. Although within ECOWAS, I don't think that there's any provision that says food products cannot be moved. That's another major challenge, because even in Nigeria, some of these food items, particularly perishable, a lot of it also come from outside the country, from neighboring countries.
Yes.
So these are the issues.
All right, Mr. Mohammed, it's you and I today. Sorry. You know, earlier on you talked about the stability of the Naira as against the dollar, and that affected the inflation rate in Nigeria. Do we have hope that we're going to get to that point where we can make where we can create that stability again? Because obviously it is a major issue when it comes to taking care of inflation. Yes, Dr. Yusuf has talked about security, has talked about all this. Let us talk about trying to stabilize the Naira.
Well, you know, NCBN celebrated Naira coming down. I said it, I think, on your program. I said we're in a corridor of stability. So a corridor of stability is different from stability. Yeah. So when
we've not opened the door to enter.
Yeah, we are just corridor. Yeah. That corridor is still where we are today. And not being a prophet of doom, it might get bad because, one, if you look at our budget benchmark for crude oil, it was $75 per barrel. If you look at crude oil at yesterday, it was about $60 per barrel.
Below our benchmark
already. So how do we earn FX? We earn FX through sales of crude oil majorly. Agriculture, yes, non-oil sector, but it's not much in terms of the value to bring, even when crude oil is just doing 5% to the GDP in terms of value of FX is higher. Direct foreign investors, portfolio investors, Nigeria in the diaspora. Now, if you look at all these 4 major factors, as it stands now, crude oil is low. Not only low, we are not even able to meet our quota. Our quota is supposed to be 2.03 million barrels per day, according to the budget that was presented by the president. As at yesterday, I think during the week, OPEC, so we have only been able to do 1.5 million. So we have that shortfall.
Yes.
Now, don't forget, we are doing the crude, naira to crude. So that also have an impact. So FX that is coming from crude before that used to come in dollars is going to come in naira. And when you don't improve production, then that means there will be a reduction in your export. That's also is a problem. So foreign direct investors, yeah, I think we could celebrate one. I think JB Morgan saying they want to put up a full banking subsidiary in Nigeria. That is huge if that comes to be. That's a foreign direct investor. Then again, when you look at foreign direct investors, how much of them have we had? It's the Chinese, and they are coming in. Then it's good when you have foreign investors, both China, both America, both Asia, both everybody coming in. Then that's when it's exciting. Nigeria in the diaspora, at a point before COVID, remittance from Nigeria in the diaspora was even higher than what we earn in crude oil, sir.
Wow.
And that was the driving force behind establishment of the Diaspora Commission, because they wanted to attract more Nigerians. Now, CBN came up that we will come up with a product. They haven't come up with that product that will make Nigeria in the diaspora want to invest here, and that will drive in FX. Now there's a challenge for Nigeria in the diaspora, the immigration issue. So when you look at that, by and by the tariff, you see, we shouldn't forget that the tariff is not even affecting Nigeria as it stands now.
Yes.
Because oil and gas is exempted from tariff, and that's our major export to the US. So we shouldn't put tariff. Yeah, where the tariff is going to affect us, where it's affecting us, is that low oil price. It has brought down the price of oil. We are not able to make it. So our foreign reserve is not growing. Just yesterday, CBN said, to stabilize the currency, they are going to pump in about $150 million into the market. But even with that, the exchange rate still closed at 1,615 official exchange rate. So for the exchange rate, it's a battle. Because why? We had a vehicle that we are not utilizing. We did not utilize. And I think the 8 years of President Buhari, we did not see them utilize that vehicle. That vehicle initially was what we call the excess crude account. And after that, it was moved to sovereign wealth fund. Well, how does that vehicle work? If crude oil is $70, you put say, no, let's put the benchmark at $65. For every $5, you save into that sovereign wealth fund. And the sovereign wealth fund are not just to keep the money, it's to invest in other sectors, especially foreign economy, to earn more FX.
Okay.
But since 8 years, if you remember, almost always our oil benchmark
had always been below.
So we have not been saving.
Yes.
What saved us in 2018 when we had that global crunch was that our reserve at that time was almost 100 billion. And that was the reason why the then Minister for Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, came up with the excess crude account. You and I know what happened to that account after Yar'Adua came in and then they to support Jonathan to be president. That money was shared. They say it was not constitutional. And when she came back as Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, what did she do? She decided to, let's make it constitutional, like other developed oil economy. Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, all of them have sovereign wealth funds that drive investment and also invest in other key sectors of their own economy. So as it stands now, you saw the second Niger bridge.
Right.
The success story of the second Niger bridge was largely driven by the sovereign wealth fund that invested hugely in that project.
Right. So, Dr. Yusuf, because of our time, we have just about 3 minutes to end this conversation. But another problem is there is actually growing public cynicism, regarding these reforms, because some people are saying that it favors the elites and the foreign investors. So I want you to speak to the fact that what role do you think communication can play in restoring trust, especially when it comes to inflation data and that of lived experiences at variance? They are not, appear to be diverged.
Well, generally, I think as Nigerians, and also the media too, should also help us here. Of course, there are challenges in the economy, but we seem to amplify too much of the negative things in the country. Because really, reforming an economy is not an easy thing. And you need the reform to avoid the complete collapse of the economy. So that communication is very important. That if reforms we have had are inevitable, they were meant to bring, bring the economy or the country back from the brink. And of course, they are painful, but I think gradually, we are getting gradually out of the challenges of those reforms. That communication and the context in which the reforms were put in place, I think needed to be, better explained to the citizens, so that, of course, no government will come and want to deliberately inflict pain on the people. No, but these things were necessary. And secondly, I think we also need to emphasize the fact that the subnationals have a very big role to play. We are talking about inflation. Agric is essentially a subnational thing. So the subnational should do a lot more in relating with the agricultural community, in relating with the rural community, in relating with issues of even rural infrastructure. Their role is extremely, very, very critical. Because there is a general mindset, again, around the country that anything that happens, whether it's about the economy, whether it's about inflation, everything is about the federal government. Whereas the subnationals also have very, very critical role to play here. So I think those are the things that we need to emphasize. We need to communicate better. We need to also communicate, the circumstances that necessitated some of these economic policies. And the government itself also needs to show that we are in all of this together, but also showing that there's also some sacrifice on the part of government officials. Yeah.
Right. We must thank you for your time on the program. Our time is up. Unfortunately, we cannot, push this conversation further. But thank you, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, for your time. And we must also thank Mukhtar Mohammed, CEO, Finance with Mukhtar, for your time on the program as well. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you.